Hello, everyone. This is this is part two, Tecumseh and the Native American Resistance. The other video, if you watch part one, it went to like 15 minutes 3 seconds. I rewound it a little bit. I always say I'm going to, and I never really do, but I did this time. So we'll knock out another 15 minutes. We'll call it a video. Let's get into it.
In 1805, when Tecumseh's laggard of a younger brother received a vision from the Great Spirit. The idler, known as Lalawethika, would transform into Tenskwatawa, the Great Prophet, and lead a religious revival that would bring together tribes from all corners of the American frontier. By the turn of the 19th century, it was clear that the Americans' hunger for territory had not been sated. The Louisiana Purchase, which saw a massive stretch of land sold by the French to the United States, all but confirmed that further ingress into native inhabited lands was inevitable. In the aftermath of their victory in the Northwest Indian War, over 600,000 American pioneers would settle in the newly established states of Kentucky and Ohio, as well as the territory of Indiana, land once dominated by native tribes. Disunited and outnumbered, the natives of the frontier were direly outmatched. Despite this, Tecumseh never gave up his grand ambitions to retake native territories. As fate would have it, it would actually be his brother who would spark the movement that would snowball into the creation of his great confederacy. This man was Lalawethika, meaning he who makes a loud noise. He had always been the black sheep of the family, having never become a great warrior like his brothers. A freak accident had taken out his eye when he was young, and he spent the majority of his youth as a perpetually drunk good-for-nothing. In the year 1805, everything changed. One day, Lalawethika was smoking in his wigwam when suddenly his body seized up and he fell into a trance. His stupor was so deep that those around him thought he had died, yet soon he awoke as a changed man. Lalawethika told everyone that he had received a vision from the Great Spirit, in which he had seen his people led onto a path of doom, and was now convinced that the Great Spirit had sent him on a mission to purify native culture for their salvation. He took on a new name, Tenskwatawa, the Open Door. In time, he became known to his people as the Prophet. The Prophet soon began spreading his teachings amongst the Shawnee. He preached that his people were the Great Spirit's original creations. In contrast, the white people were children of the evil spirit that grew from the scum of the great waters. As such, natives bore an innate responsibility to keep their way of life pure of colonial influence. To this endeavor, he denounced intermarriage between natives and whites, which had become commonplace in the last few decades. He spoke out against alcoholism and forbade the evils of drink. He renounced European clothing and other such innovations brought to his lands since first contact, mandating his followers wear the traditional garments of their people. In the winter of 1805, a familiar calamity struck the Old Northwest. Native communities were once more afflicted by an outbreak of smallpox, leaving many communities crippled or entirely depopulated. Disease had sadly become old news to the natives by this point, who often coped by blaming their misfortune on witches, who supposedly were sinister herbalists capable of brewing malicious potions and spreading illness. Thus, in the spring of 1806, the Prophet became a major ringleader in a witch hunt that spread across the Old Northwest, a hunt he used to further spread the influence of his religious movement. Tenskwatawa hounded down all those who denounced him, and all who embraced the ways of the white man. Under his watch, Christian natives and chieftains friendly to the Americans were captured, tortured, and killed, all in the name of rooting allegedly evil witches out of native communities. The Prophet soon had a growing following, not just among the Shawnee, but many neighboring tribes as well. The growing unrest in the native Northwest began to make American settlers on the frontier uneasy. One such man was William Henry Harrison, governor of the Indiana Territory. He had fought in the Northwest Indian Wars a decade earlier, and a religious uprising centered around resisting colonialism was a threat to the settlers in his jurisdiction. Seeking to pacify the movement, Harrison denounced Tenskwatawa to the Delawares with conviction, saying, "Who is this pretended prophet who dares to speak in the name of the great Creator? Is he more wise or virtuous than you are yourselves, that he should convey to you the orders of your God?" To affirm his spiritual powers, the prophet told his followers of a day of black sun. He was correct. By accurately predicting a solar eclipse, Tenskwatawa had proven his power in the eyes of his followers. In 1808, the prophet joined forces with Tecumseh. Together, the two brothers founded a village upon the confluence of the Wabash and Tippecanoe rivers. The old chieftain, Little Turtle, who had fought at Fallen Timbers, warned Tecumseh that he was settling on the lands of the Miami, to which Tecumseh replied devoutly that he was settling on native lands. The brothers' village came to be known as Prophetstown, and would serve as the staging point for their pan-native resistance movement. In the following years, people from all over the Old Northwest filtered into Prophetstown, drawn to Tenskwatawa's teachings and Tecumseh's reputation as a warrior. The community grew quickly from a small village into a bustling multi-tribal township, a hub of Native American cultural and political activity. In the end, it was Tecumseh who assumed the ultimate chieftaincy of their budding community. Tecumseh soon set out from Prophetstown on a mission to convince the tribes of the Old Northwest that resistance, not assimilation, was the key to their survival, and to build a confederacy that stretched across the American frontier. The chieftain traveled from village to village, dazzling people with his charismatic orations and legendary strength. Chieftains of the Ojibwe, Wyandots, Fox, Sauk, Odawas, Kickapoos, Lenape, Miami, Seneca, Onondaga, and Delawares all joined his cause, as of course did the Shawnee. But Tecumseh was not all honeyed words. He imposed himself harshly, threatening death to any chiefs who collaborated with the Americans. Meanwhile, as more tribes joined Tecumseh's cause, more and more natives migrated into Prophetstown, which had evolved into the center of the Native Confederacy, a swelling city-state that provided a powerful buffer against white settlers' westward expansion. The rapid growth of Tecumseh's Confederacy, its active anti-colonial rhetoric, and its existence within lands claimed by the United States put it on an inevitable collision course with the Americans. The catalyst of this confrontation came in 1809, when Governor Harrison of Indiana coerced select chieftains of the Delaware, Potawatomi, and Kickapoo to sign the Treaty of Fort Wayne, which ceded a 12,000 square kilometer piece of land along the Wabash River to the United States government. This treaty infuriated Tecumseh, as it flew right in the face of his core belief that land belonged collectively to all natives. He saw it as theft, a plain and simple attempt to extort weak chieftains whose land had been made poor by white settlers. In August of 1810, Tecumseh met with Harrison face to face outside the governor's colonial estate, and the two engaged in a heated parley. Tecumseh insisted that native land could not be bought or sold, unless done so collectively by all the tribes acting as one, and that the land ceded to the Americans in the recent treaties still rightfully belonged to the natives. Harrison replied that individual tribes were free to make treaties with the United States, but Tecumseh's confederacy was not recognized, nor did the local tribes welcome his interference in their affairs. The back-and-forth debate inspired a passionate reply from Tecumseh and his most iconic quote, "Sell a country? Why not sell the air, the great sea as well as the earth? Did not the Great Spirit make them all for the use of his children?" Tensions soon grew between the two parties. Harrison was quick to point out that the Shawnee themselves had taken land from the Miamis, so what right had they to dictate the affairs of other tribes? If the tribes were all one nation as Tecumseh claimed, why did the Great Spirit not have them all speak one language? Tecumseh lost his temper, declaring that everything Harrison said was a lie and that the Americans had cheated the native peoples. He brandished his tomahawk at the governor, prompting Harrison to draw his saber and point it at Tecumseh. A tense standoff ensued, but neither side attacked.
I'll just say both sides are guilty. So it doesn't matter. You know, but not to say there's blood on hands, but you know, both sides undermined each other to well, the natives undermined themselves, and the Americans used it as an advantage to take from them. So I mean, everyone was, it's just shit party all around.
Harrison brought the meeting to an end and demanded Tecumseh and his followers leave. Tecumseh soon realized he had been wrong to threaten Harrison, and the two met once more the following day, this time at the Shawnees' camp. This time Tecumseh opted for a more diplomatic route. He offered the United States alliance against Britain, but only if they would renounce their claim to native lands purchased in recent treaties. Harrison replied cordially, saying he would present Tecumseh's terms to the president, but did not expect the natives' conditions to be met. To this, Tecumseh replied regretfully, "I hope the great chief will give up this land. He is so far off, he may sit still and drink his wine, whilst you and I will have to fight it out." Harrison was impressed by the integrity of his enemy. He remarked that, if it were not for the vicinity of the United States, he would perhaps be the founder of an empire. In 1811, Tecumseh travelled southwards to present-day Alabama. The natives of that region were known to the Americans as the Five Civilized Tribes, due to their more positive predisposition to adopting European practices. Tecumseh's goal was to extend his alliance along the entirety of the American frontier, but he met fierce resistance in the south. The tribes there rejected his calls for unity more often than not, instead preferring to abide by the treaties they had signed with the United States. This is exemplified in an exchange between Tecumseh and Pushmataha, a chieftain of the Choctaws. Pushmataha stood firm against Tecumseh, delivering a pithy statement. "These white Americans give us fair exchange, their cloth, their guns, their tools, implements, and other things which the Choctaws need but do not make. It will be seen that the whites and Indians in this section are living on friendly and mutually beneficial terms." Tecumseh delivered a vehement reply. "Where today are the Pequot? Where are the Narragansett, the Mochican, the Poccanet, and other powerful tribes of our people? They have vanished before the avarice and oppression of the white man. Sleep not longer, O Choctaws and Chickasaws. Will not the bones of our dead be ploughed up, and their graves turned into ploughed fields?" Unfortunately, his words fell on deaf ears, and the Choctaws refused to join his cause. Nevertheless, Tecumseh did find limited success in the south. In September, he rode into the Muskogee town of Tuckabashie. There he delivered another impassioned speech about the unity of natives and resistance against the white man. Thousands of warriors raised their tomahawks and cheered, but one old chieftain remained silent. One story claims that Tecumseh stalked over to this chieftain and declared that he would march to Fort Detroit, stamp his foot into the earth, and shake down every house in Tuckabashie to prove that he had been chosen by the Great Spirit. Tecumseh then ventured back northwards, and sure enough, on December 16, 1811, the New Madrid earthquake rocked the southern United States, and every house in Tuckabashie was shaken to its foundations. Many interpreted this as the coming of Tecumseh's prophecy and proof they should join his confederacy. Henceforth, a significant amount of Muskogees declared themselves for Tecumseh, a faction which became known as the Red Sticks. Meanwhile, in Indiana, Governor Harrison was aware that Tecumseh was away from Prophetstown, which was currently under the administration of Tenskwatawa. Harrison knew that Tecumseh was the main military power in the native confederacy, and his absence made this the right time to strike. Harrison's goal was to conquer Prophetstown, thereby ripping the heart out of the growing confederacy and eliminating the threat of a native invasion of Indiana before.
I understand the reasoning. Tecumseh hadn't done anything to that point, and I don't think that was my opinion. I understand why he did it. I don't think it should have happened. It's easy for me to say that now, though.
Before it could begin. Harrison sent the Prophet an ultimatum. All Potawatomis, Kickapoos and Winnebagos were to be expelled from Prophetstown. All warriors who had launched raids upon United States citizens had to be surrendered, and all goods and horses stolen from settlers had to be returned. These terms served to effectively disband the Native Confederacy, and unsurprisingly were unilaterally rejected. On September 20th, 1811, Harrison marched northwards with an army of 1,000 men. Comprising this force were 325 Army regulars and 625 volunteers, largely from Kentucky and the Indiana Territory. The militia was made up primarily of infantrymen, but also featured mounted sharpshooters and dragoons. The principal weapon used by this expeditionary force was the Model 1795 Springfield flintlock musket.
I'm gonna stop this a little short because I don't want to start the battle and then pause it. So I'd rather just kind of start with the battle. Yeah, I'm gonna end this here. It's pretty good. You know, unfortunately, it's got some sad parts, but I'm gonna go ahead and end it though. So have a good day, have a good night.